And then there are signs that have been put up about saving him. Not doing something about the murder of Sonia Massey, but about saving his political career. So I think he's the one that's played politics. It's time for him to go.
You know, Jack Campbell, who I know to be a stand-up individual, a great sheriff, and for the governor to call him out to say that he should resign is irresponsible on his part. The governor should stay in his lane and stop grandstanding and trying to appease his base.
I hate for the situation to be politicized, and that's what I feel like some of this is occurring now. And I think that, again, let's focus on how we can make things better for everybody.
That's just some of what we heard last week from Governor J.B. Pritzker, Kankakee County Sheriff Mike Downey, and Illinois Sheriff's Association's Jim Kychek about the Sangamon County Sheriff, and should he resign? Something that Governor Pritzker said all throughout the week last week at unrelated news events. Good morning, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and the news is that Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell is going to be retiring, and that announcement being made on Friday. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us each and every weekday as we break down what's going on in and around the capital city. And here's just some of what Jack Campbell had to say. I'll go ahead and read his full statement here as we get to the latest in this ongoing saga. Of course, all of this coming after you had Sonia Massey, July 6th, early in the morning, call for help from police for a suspected prowler. And Sangamon County sheriffs showed up, and Sean Grayson, a Sangamon County sheriff's deputy, ended up shooting and killing Sonia Massey. He was fired and subsequently charged with murder, facing those charges and not being released from jail pre-trial. But all of this, of course, coming to a head on Friday, after all of the questions of how this guy got hired, all of the questions of what kinds of reforms could be made to ensure that bad actors don't get into policing. And you had Governor Pritzker say for day after day after day after day that Jack Campbell, the Sangamon County Sheriff, needs to resign. So let's go ahead now and read what Campbell had to say in a statement on Friday. He said, "I was elected sheriff in 2018. I embraced that role to lead the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office, but I always saw myself as a cop, not a politician. And for over 30 years, my career has been dedicated to improving and protecting our community as sheriff. I've committed my life to advancing our capabilities and effectiveness, implementing new policies and practices to ensure that we serve the community with the highest standards of integrity and professionalism. All this was done with the idea of creating a safer Sangamon County." Campbell went on to say, "The tragic death of Sonia Massey has been a heartbreaking event for our community. My deepest condolences go out to the family and friends. Since the incident, I've been proactive and transparent, working tirelessly to present all of the facts to the public. I have committed to making changes to our standards and collaborating with other units of government on ways to prevent incidents like this in the future. The one person truly responsible for this act is in jail, and I believe justice will be served through the legal process. Despite these efforts," Campbell said, "some in our community want me to pay the price for that person's actions, even threatening that I pay the price with my life, my family's life, or the lives of my deputies. We will only persevere together, Campbell says, as a community if we turn down the temperature and resolve to do better. We must honor the life of Sonia Massey by ensuring that no one else falls victim to such tragic and senseless action. That has been my sincere mission since that fateful day. But it has become clear that the current political climate has made it necessary or made it nearly impossible, he said, for me to continue effectively in my role. Some individuals would rather see our community divided and in turmoil than allow me to continue to serve as sheriff. The health of me and my family, the sheriff's office, and our community has been my priority. He goes on to say, as elected leaders, we must always put the overall good of the community above ourselves, and I will not risk the community that I swore to protect. For this reason, Campbell said, I'm announcing my retirement as sheriff of Sangamon County effective no later than August 31st. While it's painful to say goodbye, I do so knowing that I fulfilled my duties and served to the best of my ability. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the citizens who have supported me through the years. I am forever grateful for the community and opportunity that I had, for the people I met, and for the office that I love. So again, that's the statement from Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell. Let's just review, a week's worth of statements that Governor J.B. Pritzker made all through last week, leading up to Friday. Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell saying he's retiring.
How did the sheriff end up hiring this person? Must have known their background. Must have. I mean, no one hires somebody without checking out the hiree's background. Right. And so I have a lot of questions, and I'm so far disappointed with the answers that I'm hearing from the sheriff. But, I think that the community is reacting the way that I think is appropriate, protesting, making their voice heard, asking for change, the Massey family in particular, thinking about how do we improve the system going forward. And so I stand with them in that effort. It's been a month. We should have seen already a meeting with the Massey family. If he's reached out, he hasn't done a very good job because the Massey family hasn't had the meeting that they've asked for. And then there are signs that have been put up about saving him. Not doing something about the murder of Sonia Massey, but about saving his political career. So I think he's the one that's played politics. It's time for him to go. Yeah.
And then here's the governor outside
someone
the ribbon
who
cutting of the
moves
state
from
fair.
job to job, 1 year, half a year, and does it 6 times over the course of a few years, and whose record coming out of the military is questionable. I think those are all things that ought to be taken into account. And I want to know, and all of us, I think, want to know why the sheriff didn't take those things into account or dive deeper into those questions. It seems like there were cursory conversations because a resignation, well, that seems benign.
So it's just some of what the governor had to say all throughout the week last week. Now, on Friday, we talked with Kankakee County Sheriff Mike Downey. This all came before the announcement that Campbell was resigning, and he shared with us his thoughts about the governor making all of these statements demanding that Campbell resign.
Well, first of all, Greg, my thoughts and prayers are with the Massey family. When somebody calls the police and needs a police response for whatever reason, that person shouldn't end up dead, regardless of who they are. And it was a tragic mistake. Jack Campbell, who I know to be a stand-up individual, a great sheriff, and for the governor to call him out to say that he should resign is irresponsible on his part. The governor should stay in his lane and stop grandstanding and trying to appease his base. It's frustrating when, the legislature has tied our hands on a number of issues, and the process that we use as sheriffs in hiring is somewhat universal statewide. I mean, we're trying to get the best people we can get to be police officers in the state of Illinois. And that's a difficult task now because there is such a reduction in the number of people who want to work in the law enforcement area because of what Governor Pritzker has turned into Illinois as a pro-criminal, anti-law enforcement state. That's not taken away anything from what that officer did. That officer was completely wrong. And to Sheriff Campbell's credit, he fired him. He filed charges with the state's attorney. The state's attorney indicted him, and he is in jail right now, which is where he should be. And that's, that's what tools we have to utilize from this standpoint. Should that have happened to Miss Massey? Absolutely not. It shouldn't happen to anybody. But to sit up in Chicago and claim that the sheriff down in Springfield should resign because of something one of his officers did is absolutely ridiculous, and the governor needs to stay in his lane.
Again, that's Kankakee County Sheriff Mike Downey in the conversation we had with him on Friday. And you can see that entire conversation. Just go to America's Talking Network on YouTube, and you can find that segment. But also last week, I talked with Illinois Sheriff's Association Executive Director Jim Kychek and got his thoughts. And again, this is before Campbell announced that he was going to retire at the end of this month on Friday.
Well, first of all, the sheriff is elected, right? I mean, there's a process to go through. They're not appointed, they are elected. And unfortunately, sometimes people have employees that do bad things. Under those circumstances, should the person that is overseeing those employees, if they're the head of the agency, should they be forced to resign in all those circumstances? That's probably not an appropriate thing. I support Sheriff Campbell. I mean, I think Sheriff Campbell, if you know him, he is a sincere, quality individual. And I can tell you that unequivocally that this situation is not something that he is taking lightly by any stretch of the imagination. And he wants to make things better and make things right. And I think he deserves an opportunity to stay in that office to be able to do so. So from my perspective, let's look at what we can do to build better moving forward, as opposed to sitting here and continuing to talk about, what happened in the past. I certainly don't want to diminish again, the death of Sonia Massey, because it was horrible. It is horrible, and I feel horrible for the family and all those involved. But at the same time, I think that, it's an incident that it has occurred, and we need to be able to, take that incident and figure out, what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and let's try to not have those things happen again in the future. And I think Sheriff Campbell, nobody's going to be closer to the situation than he is. And if we're going to make improvements, he's the guy to be able to help us get there.
So again, that's Illinois Sheriff's Association Executive Director Jim Kychek, some of the thoughts he shared with us last week. Again, this is all before Campbell announced that he is set to retire at the end of this month. He was up for re-election in 2026, but now we'll see what happens here in Springfield and Sangamon County with who's going to be taking over after Campbell retires. So a lot more to be said about all of this, including the conversation about what reforms are needed in the aftermath of the Massey shooting. So that's clearly something that we'll continue to watch as that develops. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network. I'm Greg Bishop at the Center Square. Get the newsletter, get the podcasts, Illinois in Focus Daily. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signing 270 measures into law on Friday, and we've got an overview of just some of those. Welcome back. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, each and every weekday morning, keeping you updated with what you need to know. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning with America's Talking Network. So, the legislature passed more than 450 pieces of legislation this year. Just this year. It's the second year of a 2-year General Assembly. And in this second year, they passed 450 different bills. The governor has not vetoed a single one of those thus far. And he's signed hundreds. Sometimes he has bill signing ceremonies where he gets together with legislators who supported the measures, and they will, circle him while he signs the bill. Sometimes he signs 2 or 3 bills at a time. We saw that last week with some abortion legislation he signed. But other times, especially when you've got 400 some odd pieces of legislation on your desk, He does Friday evening or Friday late afternoon bill dumps, where you get a news release and the governor's office says the governor enacted all of these bills. Sometimes on a Friday, it's 40 some odd bills. Another time, it's 69 bills. Friday, he had 270 measures that the governor announced that he has signed. And if you follow me on X, or if you go to thecentersquare.com, you'll be able to see this and plenty of other stories as well. And you can also see the entire list of bills that the governor signed by going to thecentersquare.com, and you can click through and find the entirety of this list. And it's 70 some odd pages. If you were to print this PDF out, it is 70 some odd pages of legislation that the governor signed. And it gives a little bit of a description of some of the what the measures do, but we can go through all of this, and it would probably take 3 or 4 hours just to unpack it all. But Friday I did do a cursory review, and went through and found some of the back and forth that there was on some of this legislation, but now it's 270 measures enacted, effective immediately. Senate Bill 3455 has the Illinois Department of Revenue and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity creating a task force to evaluate the state's property tax system. Now, Illinois has the second highest property taxes in the country, according to not just the Tax Foundation, but a whole host of other organizations. And we had a task force to look at property taxes back in 2019. And I remember covering this. I've been covering the Illinois General Assembly for almost a decade now. And some of that task force, we were supposed to have some official results that were going to be given to the governor and the General Assembly. And they were having closed door meetings. We never really actually saw the official report. I don't think they actually put out an official report in 2019. We had a behind the scenes report released, but nothing in that report really led to substantive changes in Illinois' property tax system. So now they have another effort here, all right? And State Representative Tom Weber of Fox Lake, a Republican, he says that he was on the previous property tax relief task force, and he's not sure that this new group and this new investigation of Illinois' property tax system is going to produce any fruit.
I was on the 2019 Property Tax Relief Task Force that amounted to a lot of good efforts and initiatives that were introduced, but not one thing came to fruition. Over 70% of our property taxes come from our school districts, and they should be number one on here of being involved and understanding where exactly that 70% of our property taxes are going. We don't have property taxpayers involved in this at all. Again, this is going to be another waste of time that will amount to nothing, that anyone in here has the stomach to actually vote for, to pass meaningful relief for our taxpayers in Illinois.
Again, Illinois has the second highest property taxes in the country. Among other measures that the governor signed, he signed a bill, Senate Bill 3426, that beginning January 1st, 2025, makes changes to the motor fuel tax law to amend the method of calculation for the percentage change in the consumer price index annually. If you recall, Illinois doubled the gas tax in 2019 to pay for a multi-year $40+ billion capital program. But it wasn't just the doubling of the gas tax from 19 cents to 38 cents a gallon in the state of Illinois. It was also an annual increase every July 1st, tied to the consumer price index. So what does this ultimately do? This new law the governor signed, it changes that calculation. And I pulled up the language. It says the percentage increase in the consumer price index shall be calculated as follows. Calculate the average consumer price index for the full 12 months ending in March of the year in which the increase takes place. Calculate the average consumer price index for the full 12 months ending in March of the year immediately preceding the year in which the increase takes place. And calculate the percentage increase, if any, in the current year average determined under item 1 over the preceding year average determined under item 2. So again, you're going to be taking the average of those two CPI numbers. So that's another measure that the governor signed. Moving on, again, we're not going to go through all 270 bills because there were measures in there, for instance, that says, hey, now you can cancel your gym membership by phone. All right. Others say, hey, you can have some kind of laser type surgery at a medical spa without a doctor being present. A whole host of other measures, including bills that regulate further funeral homes. We've had some pretty high profile stories of funeral homes mislabeling human remains and not tracking those properly. So obviously, a whole host of bills dealing with that situation. But you also have local media outlets. This is interesting. Local media outlets looking to sell to out-of-state buyers, they must notify the state and the company's employees 180 days in advance of the sale beginning January 1st of 2025 under Senate Bill 3592. When this came up in the Senate, of course, the bill does a couple of things. One, it creates a student journalist scholarship fund, but it also has this requirement that if local media are looking to sell, they have to essentially put out a message to the world saying, hey, we're selling. And they got to do that with a buildup of 6 months or something to that effect. Here is State Senator Steve Stottleman, a Democrat out of Rockford, explaining why he thinks this is important, especially in the consideration of local media shrinking at what a lot of people see as an alarming rate.
The second thing it does, it creates a plan to help keep papers and news media ownership local. It does that by requiring a local news organization from selling without giving prior notice within 120 days before the sale occurs to DCO and the affected employees. The problem we're finding that we have private equity firms are coming in buying newspapers, consolidating them until they provide very local news content with no local journalists, and sometimes those newsrooms are shut down, as what happened in Southern Illinois not that long ago. By requiring this notice, the hope is other local newspapers, nonprofits, other corporations will have the opportunity to step in and help keep these publishers local.
So you got to have all this notice, right? So it passed the Senate, it goes to the House. State Representative Amy Ellick raises serious concerns about this.
As a certified public accountant for 29 years, I have walked with many companies through both purchases and sales. 120 days is a really long time. At 120 days before the date of a sale, it's not even soup yet. Lawyers are still going back and forth, setting terms. The value might not even be known yet. I caution this body to accept this provision of this bill because I think the unintended consequence here is that 120-day notice is given. Employees are going to start dropping off one by one, leaving. You've just destroyed the value of that local newspaper, and now that newspaper will not be able to be sold to anybody, and that out-of-state buyer or anybody else decides to back out, leaving you with nothing. I think the journalism scholarships are great. I have a new journalist in the family. That's great, but I really caution you about this 120 days. It's too long. It's not required from other industries. I think there's issues with, interstate commerce here that really need to be addressed.
So my mistake, not 180, 120 days. So what is that, 6 months? It's about 4 months. Regardless, got to do math. That's why I'm a journalist, because I'm not a mathematician. But it raises some serious questions as to if they're worried about hedge funds coming in and buying these properties out. This process could lead to that entity being devalued so much to where it's inevitable that a hedge fund is going to come in and buy it, not at the original listing price, but much lower. Regardless, that measure is now law. You've got another bill, House Bill 2363, that bans certain types of light bulbs beginning January 1st, 2026. The sale of screw or bayonet-based compact fluorescent lamps will be prohibited. Pin-based compact fluorescent lamps or linear fluorescent lamps will be prohibited the following year. Then you get Senate Bill 2960, which bans small and single-use plastic bottles in hotels with 50 rooms or more starting July 1st of 2025. Then January 1st, 2026, any hotel, regardless of the size, cannot provide small and single-use plastic bottles. This was something that State Senator Steve McClure raised question about on the Senate floor when it was ultimately brought up and passed.
This is unnecessary. If all the hotels are for this, if they're in favor of this, then let them do it. Let them do it. But don't use the state of Illinois as an excuse as to why someone's trip to our state is a little bit worse because they go to a bathroom or a shower and whatever is supplied is not adequate for them because of this legislation.
He also goes on to say that requiring local law enforcement to enforce this with all of the other mandates they have on top of them would just be burdensome. But that measure, of course, staggered as to when it's actually enacted. Several bills impacting artificial intelligence among the 270 that were signed. The Human Rights Act being amended January 1st, 2026 under House Bill 3773 to protect employees from the discrimination from the use of artificial intelligence in the workplace and require transparency about the use of AI for employment-related decisions. House Bill 4762 creates protections for performers and other individuals from wrongful use of AI voice or melody replicas. And that's effective immediately. Beginning next year, House Bill 4875 prohibits the use of digital replicas created by AI in certain content without authorization of the recording individual. And House Bill 4623 clarifies that Illinois' child pornography laws apply to images and videos created by AI. Several measures impacting schools beginning in July 1st of 2025. House Bill 4895 requires public high schools to provide learning opportunities on the impacts of climate change and solutions for addressing the crisis. So this is something that's going to be ultimately provided in schools. And what does that mean exactly? Is that change of science focus? Is that focusing on climate change and the solutions for addressing that? Who's going to be regulating what the solutions are? Are those solutions going to be updated as the science updates? Regardless, there was pushback on this. State Representative Stephen Reich, Republican from Woodstock, had some serious problems with this.
What we're doing here is merely injecting certain things in. We can't swing a dead cat without finding somebody discussing climate this, climate that. I do believe that this is not a proper subject for ISB to be instructing teachers and educators more and more about things that you might consider to be an evolving thing, but the fact is that evolution is a natural event. What you say is causing that evolution, I believe and I fear, will creep into the curriculum and thus further confuse rather than enlighten our children about what is the true nature of climate on this planet. Thank you.
Again, there's a lot of debate, and while some say there's a consensus in the scientific community, science doesn't necessarily lend to there being a consensus. Science is meant to poke holes in theories and to raise questions and have that conflict publicly and saying, okay, well, you say this, but other data suggests that. So regardless, we'll see how that evolves. House Bill 4175, it prohibits the use of corporal punishment and physical punishment in all schools, not just public schools, but private schools as well. This was something else that there was some concern about on the House floor when this was raised. State Senator Dan Swanson questioning the sponsor of this, Chicago State Representative Margaret Krogh.
Okay.
Because that was a concern if a coach had a student doing extra push-ups or running that extra lap because of making a mistake at a ball game or making a mistake at practice. That could be viewed as inflicting punishment on that athlete. So
I do not believe that I don't believe the bill does that. In public schools, this is obviously still, even though we are creating an explicit ban for both public and private schools, it has been in place for quite some time now that public schools cannot have corporal punishment. So if we had any fear of that happening, it would have already been occurring.
Right. Well, it's just a concern when we start imposing some different private school versus public schools demands on a private school.
understand that. However, I think when it comes to the safety of our children and children with corporal punishment, that this is one of those issues that should extend both to public and private schools.
Now, I didn't go to the principal's office a whole lot when I was a kid, but I remember one time I went in grade school, and there was a paddle with holes in it, like a cricket paddle in the principal's office. I never saw it used, but it was almost like it was there just as a threat. My, how times have changed. A bunch of different changes for government agencies among the 270 laws that the governor enacted on Friday. Senate Bill 3434 allows the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and Office of Homeland Security to adopt rulemaking authority for state-funded grant programs managed by the agency. But during debate, Republicans raised concern that this gives government agencies too much power.
Of Homeland Security to adopt rules for the implementation of its state-funded programs and grants.
That's State Representative Maurice West.
And now this bill ensures that their rules and the language that is needed for both agencies is merged into one. It has nothing to do with what happened in the past, which I understand.
Some of the challenges, the downsides, the very serious problems that develop when we give agencies of state government too much unilateral control.
And this is State Representative Ryan Spain, a Republican from Peoria.
Where we allow a chief executive of our state government to have outsized, unchecked control. And anytime the legislature grants rulemaking authority to an agency, we are giving up a little piece of our control. And it would be my very strong contention that we all saw firsthand how giving up too much control can create problems for the state of Illinois. We saw in the pandemic. Let's not head down the same road again.
And during the pandemic, Republicans were clamoring for hearings on a whole host of things. I mean, for instance, there was so much fraud in the state's unemployment system, but we didn't have any true substantive hearings until it was far too late. Needless to say, all of the other regulations the governor had, including, limiting the number of people that could be on a boat, requiring kids to wear masks in schools, saying that if a kid was around somebody who was suspected of having COVID, then they couldn't come to school for a certain number of days. The overall stay-at-home orders in general terms, the closure of businesses, and so on. All of that's done by state governments during those years, and Republicans worry that this particular measure, while it might seem innocuous to some people, they have concerns it gives government agencies far too much power. The Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, they must include a hair care plan to focus on culturally competent hair care, and that's a measure that is under House Bill 5097 that takes effect January 1st of 2025. But there's also some criminal law that are changing here. Criminal charges for unlawful use of a weapon and other similar charges are changing titles with House Bill 4500. That begins January 1st, 2025. This is an interesting one because people are being charged with unlawful use of a weapon if they have a firearm in their car and they weren't caught in the commission of another crime. They just simply were in possession of a firearm, and they weren't supposed to have a firearm for whatever reason, be it they're prohibited or they're a felon or so on. But this changes the unlawful use of a weapons charges and similar charges to better reflect what the actual crime somebody was charged with, so the stigma doesn't continue on, because if somebody looks at, you have a charge of unlawful use of a weapon, what'd you do, shoot up a school? No, it's I was found with a firearm and I shouldn't have had it. So the unlawful use of a weapon statute is going to change perspective, not moving backwards, but forwards. All right. So from January 1st of 2025, people charged with that crime won't be facing unlawful use of a weapons charge. You have another measure that drew some interesting debates, and this is dealing with the Secretary of State being allowed to issue mobile ID cards. So on somebody's phone, you can have your ID or driver's license. This is through House Bill 4592. During debate, though, State Representative Cam Buckner and State Representative Jeff Kiker, they went back and forth about some of the concerns, especially from civil libertarians who have questions about digitizing these types of documents, and then what happens if you get pulled over.
House Bill 4592 amends the Illinois Identification Card Act and the Illinois Vehicle Code by authorizing the Secretary of State's office to create and issue mobile identification cards and mobile driver's licenses. This bill creates an enabling legislation because currently there is no state law or statute that authorizes the SOS to create and issue these mobile IDs and mobile driver's licenses to Illinois constituents. The bill changes existing law by doing a few things. It adds references to mobile IDs and driver's licenses so that the same will be subject to the rights and penalties associated with ID cards and driving privileges. It adds requirements so that mobile IDs and mobile driver's license can ensure the credential will be secure and interoperable. And lastly, it requires that mobile IDs and licenses comport with the system established and in use by the AAMVA and optimized across state lines to ensure identity verification.
Is a very real concern. As I understand it, if a law enforcement agent shows up at your home and you invite them in for a cup of coffee, you've then consented basically to a search of your premises. How does that theory hold when you're dealing with a cellular telephone? If you open it up and show them your ID, you hand it to them, say they swipe to another one, or you have a text that comes in and supersedes the image, is that a legitimate search? Is that qualified, or is that a tainted apple of the tree?
We've got some very specific language here in Section 9 that says the display of a license shall not serve as authorization for law enforcement or any other person to search, view, or access any other data in your phone.
With all of the modern technology, if I hand my phone over to a law enforcement officer, is there any penalty if someone were to access the data on my phone? I mean, we have devices, law enforcement has devices, obviously, that could clone my phone once they got their hand on it.
That's a great point from State Representative Dan Calkins. They do have these devices where if you somehow they get your phone, they can plug it in and it'll essentially just strip all the data off there, and they can go through and search that and see who you've been talking to and so on. So some concerns there, but Buckner saying that the language says that they're not allowed to do that. Well, what about penalties against those who ultimately do that? I guess there are processes in place right now to hold law enforcement accountable if they do violate that particular provision. But regardless, that's going to be law. So if you want a mobile ID, a digital ID that you can carry around on your phone, then apparently you're going to be able to do that. Then you get into the questions of, if you're in a place with no cell service and you can't get your phone, what if your phone dies, right? And you can't, I don't have my physical ID, my phone just died. Regardless, interesting stuff's going to happen there. But you also have, beginning January 1st, 2025, the Illinois Secretary of State can offer an 8-year driver's license. Also, January 1st, 2025, Senate Bill 3406 requires the rules of the road publication to include information about transporting hazardous materials. Again, we're talking about 270 different laws the governor signed on Friday. Here we are. It's going on 25 minutes of a segment here because we're just picking off some of the ones that at least I thought were most important. And you can find this entire report at thecentersquare.com. But this is an interesting one as well. Drivers having to appear in court are granted notice before a potential suspension for failure to appear with House Bill 277, effective January 1st, 2025. Supporters of this said that ultimately it gives people more of an opportunity to get to court so that they don't lose their license. Someone who had their license plate stolen can get free ones from the Illinois Secretary of State's office beginning January 1st, 2025 under Senate Bill 3471. But then there's a whole bunch of other things dealing with medicine and insurance. There's a measure that deals with inhalers, saying that insurers can't deny coverage for inhalers, and they cap how much those are for a 30-day supply. Medically necessary colonoscopies can be required for coverage for insurance beginning January 1st, 2026. Non-ablative surgery, hair removal through laser at a medical spa can be done without a doctor on site beginning January 1st of 2025. Also, a lot of things, anybody out there, landlords, there's several laws that are impacting landlords and tenants. Tenants can pay landlords through cash or paper check to avoid transaction fees beginning January 1st, 2025, under House Bill 4206. The Landlord Retaliation Act in House Bill 4768 outlines protections for tenants and prohibitive actions by landlords in attempting to resolve an issue. That's effective January 1st. Landlords are also prohibited from charging a fee to access a tenant screening report beginning next year with House Bill 4962. So again, go to thecentersquare.com where you can see the entire list for yourself, where you can scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. 270 measures signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker on Friday. And we just reviewed just a handful of them. How many more remain on the governor's desk? That's a great question. We can go and take a look here real quick, ilga.gov. And if you go to legislative reports, let's see, bills pending governor action. Click on that. And he's got 85 bills remaining out of 450 plus that he signed. 84 bills remain. We going to see those all in one lump sum on Friday, or is he going to have some bill signing ceremonies throughout this week? We'll, of course, be watching that for you, and you can wake up each and every morning and check in with Illinois in Focus daily to get the latest. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. Long segment here, but when you're talking about 270 different bills and even just highlighting some of them, it's going to take a while. So I appreciate you guys' patience. Be sure to get the podcast anywhere. Illinois in Focus daily. Have a great Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow.